Where have you been? Where are you coming from?
I'm coming from. I'm coming from. I don't know how to answer that if it's not geography.
Okay. Questions.
Uh, I guess I can say I'm coming from. I'm coming from. I'm coming from a place where things were really painful a long time ago. But as time went by, things have gotten better. Uh,
So you're coming from a memory of a painful time.
yeah, that's when, yeah.
Can you live in a memory?
No, memory is
Well, you
what
can, but it's
can
always
play.
in the present, right?
Yeah, it can play out, but I cannot live in that.
You can't live anywhere except for the present, correct?
Yeah.
And how long is the present moment?
It's a, if I talk about a moment, it's an infinitesimal, small.
How small is infinitesimally small?
That's a mathematical
So here we
problem.
have the past, here we have the future. In
Hmm.
between them is the present. How big is the present in
It's a
time?
mathematical problem of like limiting to zero, right?
In time.
Yeah, it's a limiting to zero.
How do you know it's not zero?
Because as I stack these moments on top of one another, it leads to time and movement.
But I'm asking in actuality, as a scientist, how long is that interval?
I'm also answering actuality. So, like in mathematics, when we differentiate or integrate, right?
Time, yeah.
Right, we basically do it with limit approaching to zero, but it's not actually zero because zero will lead to infinite or those errors in the
And you can't have
model.
infinity in mathematics, is that right?
I mean, we can approximate it, but
So are you saying that you're giving a duration to the present moment because you need to in mathematics?
I'm giving a
Conceptually?
duration. I'm giving a duration to the moment because it makes sense.
Okay, so that duration in moment is the Planck length, correct? Planck, the Planck length.
That I don't know.
Look up the Planck length.
I mean, it's a very small number, but it could be.
Well, but that's the
But
limit. That's the limit of where we go conceptually is the Planck length.
but how do I know it's not smaller than that? Because
Well,
I
that's a
can't
good
measure
point.
it.
That's a good point. But the Planck length is the smallest number we can conceptualize. It's the wavelength of light, I believe, at its highest frequency, or it's the
Mhm.
space between. It's how the space between quantum particles are measured in the nucleus, I believe, or something like that. It's an atomic space. I mean, it's the limit. What's the number?
The value of Planck length is like 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 35
Okay, and that's
in meters.
millimeters, right? Or is that meters?
In meters.
Meters. Okay, so in millimeters, it's
10 raised to minus 32.
10 to the minus 32 millimeters. And how long is a millimeter? About the length of this pencil lead, right? So 10 to the minus 32.
Hmm.
Do you have any idea how small that really is?
I mean, I can just imagine.
Yeah. I think that whole thing is imagined, frankly. And I'm willing to bet
Mhm.
that within 10 years, you'll agree that that does not, the present does not just approach zero, it is
Mhm.
zero. There's no
Okay.
duration. The present is actually outside of time, but that's for later. That'll be fun, you know.
I mean,
You're saying it's 10 to the minus
it
32 roughly. That's what you're saying.
isn't it similar to how movies were created long time ago. So like initially it was only pictures, and then slowly and slowly we moved from pictures to movies,
Right.
like videos, hundreds of like 100 years ago, something like that.
But the human eye is relatively crude compared to minus 32 millimeters, 10 to the minus 32.
Mm-hmm.
10 times minus 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 10, 32 times. That's a very, 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 very small number. And I'm saying we only have that because conceptually we do not want to admit that the present moment takes no time. It's actually outside of time. So you don't know this, but you're actually experiencing outside of time space all the time, every time you're truly in the present. Now, it's a little bit more difficult because the brain takes, 200 milliseconds to process a visual stimulus. And that's only a fifth of a second, but nonetheless, it'll be fun to let's have a little, I'll bet you $1. And not 10 years, 3 years. Or make it more fun, make it a year. All right? I don't know why that came to mind, but it did. Okay. Questions? Yeah, it came to mind because I realized if you're in the present, if you're truly in the present and you're empty, and you're completely empty, that's Satori. And Satori takes place outside of time and time. And then you realize, wait a minute, we've just been assuming a minimum length of the duration of the current moment because our computers and our mathematics and our logic requires us to say that there's something there. But 200 milliseconds is what? 10 to the minus... If we had 200 milliseconds... Well, wait, that's the length that's a Planck length. What's the Planck duration?
Let me look that up.
It's just fun, science is fun. As is mysticism. But both of them just pale compared to the bliss of enlightenment, sudden enlightenment or whatever.
Planck time is defined as time it takes for light to travel 1 Planck length in a vacuum.
Perfect. Okay, so what's the minimum Planck time?
Yeah, so it said that the value is 5.4 into 10 raised to minus 44 seconds.
Okay, 5.4 minus 5.4. They put the decimal after the 5.
Yeah, into 10 raised to minus 44 seconds.
To the power of minus 44.
Yeah, 10
now,
raised
you'll
to
admit
power of...
you'll admit that's a very, very short time.
Yeah.
10 to the minus 10th times 10 to the minus 10th times 10 to the minus 10th times 10 to the minus 10th, 44 times. I'm going to say it's 0. Did you happen to listen to the last video?
Yeah.
You know that Borges, Jorge Luis Borges, time is a substance I am made of. I love that. Because there is no time. It's hard to accept that, but what are you going to do? Because think about it. The past is illusory. Is mental, right? You know that. The future is mental, illusory. You know that. Not fundamental. So the only thing that could possibly exist would be the present. But when we look at the present, it's 10 to the minus 44th seconds, or 5 to the minus 44th. Or I don't know why they don't just say 0.5 to the minus 45th. But okay. It's infinitesimally solid. And I think we do that just because of our current science, our current physics, and our brains don't want to accept that this world is illusory. And it's really dream time.
If there was no movement, then it would have been pretty easy to know that time is 0. But because there's
no movement, how can there be movement? Explain movement to me.
The movement is when I lift my finger from the table to my eye level. my finger is moving from the table up to my eye level in space.
Are you
There's
sure?
a movement.
How's it able to do that?
It's able to do that
Okay.
because
Take it halfway up. Take it halfway up to your eye.
Mhm,
Halfway up. Now take it the other half. Half of that. Now
mhm,
take it half of that. Now take it half of that. Now take it
mhm,
half of that. Now take it half of
mhm,
that. Half of that.
mhm, mhm.
When is it ever going to reach your eye?
I mean, it's the same problem. It's like that. Let's say if I have a car and I'm driving from point A to B, I
Okay.
drive half of it, then I just drive half of it. It's the same, the thing we talked about, like limiting to zero, but it's not actually zero.
It's not? How do you know? Are you putting the logic, the horse of logic after the cart of reality or something like that? Are you mixing horse and cart? So let's take
Okay,
how long does
let
it
me.
take? Okay, hold your finger up like this, like you're doing.
Mhm.
Now, in this instant, is there any motion of your finger?
In this instant, I mean,
It's holding
there
still.
is
It's still, right? There's no movement.
this very minute shaking that happens
Well,
with
no. Come on. Well,
everyone.
imagine it's a pole.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Now
Hmm.
move it here. Is there any movement here?
No.
Is there any movement in this spot in between the two spots?
If I hold it, then no.
How about right here? Is there any movement?
No.
Is there any movement up one more? So basically, as was discussed, there's no, if you just use logic, this whole interval is made up of a bunch of moments in which there's no movement. And yet somehow or another they appear to move to us, but every instant in time there's no movement.
Because there are moments in between when I'm moving.
Oh, really? How long are those moments in between?
The same infinitesimal small that we talked about.
Oh, so you think that Zeno's paradox does not exist? Have you studied David Hume by any chance? Have you studied causality?
I have.
Look
I.
up causality in the Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Causality. And let's just have fun with this for a little bit.
Mhm. Causality in
What is
philosophy.
causality?
It says causality is an influence by which one event, process, state, or object contribute to the production of another event.
Okay, it's an influence.
Process. Hmm?
It's an influence.
Influence, yeah.
What is an influence?
I think they have been pretty vague about influence, but influence is.
Yeah, David Hume. We can't find causality. That's one of the problems you'll find in philosophy
that
and
that
science.
that I understand because with everything there is something preceding it.
Exactly.
So that way, if I just keep going, I cannot find a actual
And how
the.
many influences are there on a given thing? Like take a cue ball. How many influences? There's
I
the
mean,
pool stick. There's the table. There's the felt on the table. There's the air. There's the temperature. There's the details of the ball. There's the paint on the ball. Right? There's how many
mhm,
influences are
mhm.
there? So we simplify things in order to live in our dream world. But if you look scientifically at things like causality or time and space, you'll find that you won't find them. Just like the
Okay. I
self.
think
Just like the self, you won't find it.
okay. I think I'll look into that
Good.
because right now I don't have enough information
Good, good,
to
good. All right.
say
Well,
one way or the other.
so the name of this game is the search for truth, the search for God, the search for reality, right?
Mhm.
And so we use whatever God provides us or whatever reality provides us with. And he's provided us with a lot. But we can't be lazy about it. We have to look, well, wait a minute, what is this plank length really?
Mhm.
And where does it come from? And what is causality really? And what is space? This stuff that contracts or expands depending on who's looking at it. Or time, this stuff that, is totally malleable. It's like silly putty. If you're moving fast, time compresses. But if you're moving more slowly, time expands. Well, wait.
But that's subjective time.
Well, no, I think if you measure it, it's measurement. I agree, it is subjective, but that's using objective measurement tools. That's what Einstein's point was. That if you measure, depending on where the observer is, so let's just do it for fun. Maybe the audience would enjoy this or learn from it. Let's say you're standing next to a train, and the train is going this way.
Mm-hmm.
And inside the train, some kid has rolled a ball down the aisle, and the ball's going 5 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. Inside the train, how fast is the ball going?
Mm-hmm. I mean, ball will be going with the speed of train plus.
No, inside the train, how fast will the ball be going? The kid can't throw the ball at 85 miles an hour. The ball is going 5 miles an hour inside down the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
But outside the train, the ball is going 85 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's measure it from, let's say, Mars, and now we have to add the rotation of the Earth. How fast is the ball really moving?
Mm-hmm.
So the speed of the ball is completely relative.
Mm-hmm.
I hope everybody gets that. It's pretty, to me, it's pretty straightforward. So can we say that there's an absolute speed of the ball?
I mean, everything is relative because
there you go. Everything is relative, and it's relative to what?
The frame of the observer.
Exactly, the observer. And that's what you want to call objective or subjective?
Because then it will always be subjective, but it's always
so you're saying you're giving me that it's entirely subjective, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all. And so apply that to this work.
Mm-hmm.
The time is subjective. Space is subjective. Causality is subjective. Like, what made the market go up? It was the Federal Reserve. No. It was the investors. No. It was the investment banks. No. It's because they dropped interest rates in Bolivia. No. You know, we could go on and on and on forever, right? Mm-hmm. But even the whole notion of the market is subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just a model. And what we're trying to do is get past the models and get to reality, because God is reality. Truth is reality. Love is reality. Mm-hmm. Okay? Sorry about that. I guess you caught me in a mood. All right, questions?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Questions. And also it's a continuation of you know what we're discussing before. Okay. Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Good.
So I wanted to talk about the video that I sent you yesterday about the Eckhart Tolle video on serving on service.
Yes. Tolle's a wonderful guy. A very good teacher. I recommend him highly.
Mm-hmm.
For the general masses, it's a great start.
Mm-hmm. So from the video, it seemed to me that he said he talked about the ego, and he said ego is basically the self-reflection.
The what?
Ego is basically the self-reflection.
Yeah, that's the problem. For me, that was a problem. Okay, so self-reflection. Let's see. If you're going to speak to everyone, sometimes you have to gloss over some things. So let's take this phrase, self-reflection. Mm-hmm. What does he mean by that?
I think by that he means, at least in the context of helping people, it meant the idea of yourself. Okay. Whether you are doing.
So tell me about your idea of yourself. Or no, let's leave it abstract. Tell me about somebody's idea of their self.
It's basically how they perceive themselves.
Okay. I'm a middle-aged banker who lives in New York, and I'm married with 2 kids, and I'm just a guy trying to get by. Something like that?
Mm-hmm. That could be one.
Okay, so what would a reflection of that look like? Because the phrase is self-reflection.
Reflection is just basically like in the mirror we see an image, an idea of ourselves, but ourselves could be totally different. It's just the idea.
So how's that a reflection?
It's a reflection, but it's not reality, I guess. That's why it's a reflection.
If he saw himself truly, would he see a banker? Would he see a father? Would he see an average guy just trying to get by?
Probably not.
Okay, so how can it be a self-reflection?
I think reflection by itself just means an idea.
Oh, okay. So okay. So instead of self-reflection, self-idea or idea of self.
Yeah, something
All
like
right.
that, yeah.
Okay. If that's the case, if you're going to translate it that way, then what's the question?
So my question was, uh, when he was talking about helping people and the Jesus quote of one hand not knowing if the other hand is giving or not.
The right hand knows
So
not of what the left is doing. Yes.
yeah, so does
Beautiful
that
teaching, by
mean,
the way.
yeah, that was great. So does that mean that if I'm helping someone and I know that I'm helping someone, then that's not helping because I know it?
It's not helping you.
Yeah.
If you sense it as, oh, this is me helping somebody else, then you lose the merit
Hmm.
because you're not really helping someone else. You're helping yourself.
Hmm.
But worse than that, what you do is you add to your own ego, your spiritual pride, or your idea of yourself as, oh, I'm a good person or I'm an enlightened person because I help people. That's the minimum human requirement, right? Compassion. And so, but the thing is, in all fairness, it's a very good question because to get to that state is difficult for us until we've left the self behind. That's why I don't like this phrase self-reflection. I don't like that. I like self-idea. I think he may have just, spoken loosely at that time. Eckhart Tolle. But so yeah, if you have an idea that you're helping somebody, if you go, oh, I'm so good, I went and I gave, I went to the animal shelter and I helped the animals.
Hmm.
That strengthens your ego.
Hmm.
Where it's natural just to take care of animals. If you see an animal suffering, you try and relieve its suffering.
Hmm.
You don't need to get the self involved. And to the extent that you do, you're strengthening the ego, and that's at counter purposes.
Hmm.
And that's why Jesus
So,
said the right hand does not know what the left hand is doing, and the vice versa.
so I'll take an example.
You know who
Like,
else is great on this is Meister Eckhart, the guy that Eckhart Tolle named himself after. The 13th century Austrian-German mystic. Master Eckhart. He sounds like a Zen master. But go ahead.
yeah, so I wanted to take an example. So when I'm not thinking, right, I'm just like just living life, and then things happen automatically. It's like if I am helping someone, it happens automatically. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, then that also happens automatically. But then over the time, I have been told by some people that I need to help more. I need to like do more.
By
I'm
some
too
people.
selfish.
Who's some
Yeah,
people that have the right to tell you that?
You have also
Your
told me in the
parents?
past.
What?
No, you have also told me in the past that I am
Yeah, in the
too
beginning, I
selfish.
think it's very important. But that's the beginning practice, right?
Hmm.
Generosity is a paramita. The reason it's a paramita is because you're trying to get to the point to where you can have egoless generosity.
Hmm.
And so to practice, I mean, some people aren't used to being generous at all. The whole idea of helping somebody out and not getting paid for it or something like that is like totally alien to them. So in the beginning, in the Mahayana or Vajrayana, you practice, or even in the Hinayana, you practice generosity. In Christianity, you practice charity. In Islam, you practice, I think it's one of the pillars of Islam. You give a 10% to the poor or to the hospitals or something like that.
Hmm.
So every tradition has this, but it's an introductory practice.
Hmm.
And then you can do the same. When you can do the same thing and not think about it,
Hmm.
then you've made that much progress, and that's substantial progress. So this is see, I was thinking about this earlier. This work has to be individualized. It really does. It's like psychotherapy that way, or true teaching. I mean, unless you've got a real genius on your hand, and those are very, very rare. It has to be individualized for the persons, because some people are very strong, for example, with generosity, but they're very weak with discipline. Or their meditation is fantastic, but their insight is not good enough to keep them going. Does that make sense?
Sorry?
Does that make sense that as you progress along the path, that these things are going to evolve and change, and they become more not more difficult, but more demanding of less ego? They're actually less difficult once you... But it's a struggle at first. Does that answer that?
Cool. Yeah.
Yay. Next question.
I have a follow-up on that.
Good.
So let me pull up the section.
Yeah, I really think he was misspeaking when he said self-reflection. Because if it's a reflection of the self, the small s self, that can't be right. But if it's a reflection of the capital S self, then it doesn't look anything like the ego. So I think he just, spoke loosely, that's all. God help me if somebody held me to that standard. Ooh. While you're there, I happen to have this book here. I'm going to show it to people. For teaching Tales of the Dervishes, this book here by Idris Shah, The Exploits of the Incomparable Nasruddin. Oh, I'm sorry. It's this way. Anyway, the book teaches from beginning to end. So I'm just introducing people to this beautiful book of Nasruddin jokes. Is this up or is... No, it's upside down. So there we go. So the whole book's a beautiful teaching instrument from the Sufis, the real Sufis. And plus it's got a lot of good jokes in it. So I recommend that book to folks. Okay, question.
Yeah, so this is from the book Dream Conversations, page 49.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Also, this is gorgeous. Just let me do a quick ad. The Shobin Genzo of Dojin, translated by Thomas Clary. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, Dream Conversations. Page 49.
Page 49.
Yes, sir.
So I think here they talk about the difference between working on directly fundamental versus I think
which paragraph? Which paragraph?
I think it starts from the second paragraph. If people believe in the fundamental.
Right, but just in case people don't already know this part, let me just read the first paragraph. Referring to the fundamental, Zen teaching says that it is not less in ordinary people nor more in sages, that it is inherent in everyone and complete in every individual. If people take up the subject of the fundamental but then imagine that they are deluded and try to do some practice to become enlightened, then they are straying from the subject. So, like Jesus says again, the kingdom of God is within you. Like Meister Eckhart says, it's within. Or as Jesus says, it's closer than your near jugular vein. Or the Buddha says that we all have the same Buddha nature. We do. The same amount, the same quality, the same Buddha nature. The same truth is within all of us. And so whether you're a sage or whether you're a sinner, you still have that potential within you. All right, now we'll go to your paragraph. If people believe in the fundamental, which is the ground truth, right, they should not cling to the notion that they are deluded and seek enlightenment somewhere. Nevertheless, as long as they have not clearly experienced what is fundamentally complete in everyone, they should cast off their existing notions of distinction between delusions and enlightenment and look directly into the fundamental, either by themselves or in association with a teacher. So that's beautifully put, and it's characteristic of Zen that they say, one way or the other, you should just go straight for the fundamental. That's what Zen is about. Going straight to the truth directly, with a teacher or without a teacher, but go there. Now, what's your question?
Yeah. So in the next paragraph from this, they explain the the process on how to do that, and I wanted to ask about that. Page 49.
Okay. In the stories of enlightenment of ancient adepts, we do not read of anyone asking how to apply the mind in an effort to accord with the fundamental. They used to ask directly about what the Buddha is, what Zen is, where Buddhas come from, and so on. Since the questions were direct, the answers they elicited were also direct, giving immediate indications of the fundamental.
So here,
remember I sent you a Zen koan, remember, where someone asked, where do you come from? And he said, I came from such and such a place. And he said, well, how did you get here? And he says, I took a boat. And then the master asked him, well, where is the boat? And what did the adept say?
I think he said, under my feet.
Right. So what does that do to your mind?
It just kind of stumps the mind.
Stops it. And it's in that stopping. This is what the Zen masters were masters of. They could stop the mind. And a story like that, well, I mean, the guy's standing there clearly on the ground, right? Nowhere close to the water. And yet he's saying the boat is under his feet, so that your mind immediately stops. Now, what's your question?
Yeah, so I wanted to ask more about this, how to what kind of questions are they asking? Are they different than the materials that we read from the books?
Yes, because they're direct. They're in a way they're more difficult. In a way they're easier. But see, so remember stopping and seeing. You have to stop.
Yeah.
And then you have to see. Stopping means stopping the mind.
If you just read the next paragraph, it will make it kind of clear what they're talking about.
Either that or we could go to koans in this book, but okay. Beautiful, gorgeous book, but very difficult, frankly. And unless you're going to read the whole thing, you probably shouldn't even bother with this one. Treasury of the Eye of True Teaching. All right. So now we're going to another paragraph on page 49.
Yeah, the last one.
These direct, immediate indications were not meant to be research materials or lessons for practice, but people who did not understand them used to dig into them, sometimes for many years. The process of sustained confrontation of pointers to the fundamental might be called the practice or training, but it is not the same thing as defining understanding, practice, and realization, and then cultivating various contemplations. Yeah, so what's the question?
So basically, it's defined as different from reading material, understanding or contemplating them. It's something different practice altogether.
Yes, it's a Zen koan. It's an art form and a poetic form and a teaching format that the Zenists mastered. And basically, they had students that had already been prepared somewhat, right? Because if you're talking to a Zen master, you've already mastered basic Buddhism. You've read the sutras, right? So you know what they're referring to when they talk about different things. If they talk about little boats on rivers, or if they talk about wild foxes or things like that, you know what these things refer to. And then by using these direct means, and this is a lost art, because Zen now has turned into just a clown show, pretty much. Pardon me. Something like that, for the most part. There may be some real Zen masters out there still teaching real students, but when you read these koans, you can see that they're designed to stop the mind in its tracks, and then people wake up. That's the way that people wake up. And so they're trying to wake people up. Sometimes they'll hit them with a stick and it'll wake them up. You got to shock the ego out of its customary rut. You got to shock the conditioned mind. I mean, like in the koan that we were talking about. Wait a minute, this guy's talking. He says the boat is underneath his feet, but he's standing on the mainland. So how does that? What? How does that make any sense? But remember the original question: how did you get here? Right? Or more importantly, where did you come from? Or where have you been? As the introductory question. So this was a common format. And I'd like to, and so this is an incredibly elegant art. It's as elegant as the Sufi teaching stories, but it works in a different manner. And so you have to be aware of that. And that's what he explains in that paragraph. He says it's not the usual, what does he say? But it is not the same thing as defining understanding, practice and realization, and then cultivating various contemplations. This is different. So you chew on that for years. And this is where it's more similar to some of these. I mean, there are koans in here. But these are smaller koans designed to enlighten you about your own mind. So this is a book of koans as well. Is that reading right? Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
How about there?
Yeah, I can see it.
That's not upside down, is it?
No, it's fine.
And this one's not upside down?
Yeah. And this is also fine.
What about this one?
Yeah, now it's upside down.
This is upside down?
Yeah, this is upside down, yes.
Gosh, this doesn't look upside down to me. It looks backwards. At any rate, the world is upside down and backwards, and that's the teaching of one of the teachings of the book. And so whether we use the Sufis koans, or whether we use the koans of the Zen folks, or whether we use the koans of Jesus, let the right hand not know what the left one is doing. That's, to understand that, you have to penetrate. But in Zen, in the 13th, the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th centuries, while Meister Eckhart was, dealing with the church and all this other stuff, right? The church had gone through all of its convolutions. In China, and then Japan and Korea, or then Korea, then Japan, they were, I think that's the order, they were developing these other teaching mechanisms to get to the same truth, but through a different mechanism. And so that's why I keep harping on these books. Because sooner or later, one of them will get to you. And then boom. And if they don't get to you, in this case, in the case of the Sufis, they're very, very educational. For example, the majesty of the sea. Regally, the waves were hurling themselves upon the rocks, each deep blue curve created by the whitest foam. Seeing this sight for the first time, Nasruddin was momently overwhelmed. Then he went near to the seashore, took a little water in his cupped hand, and tasted it. "Why?" said the mullah. "Why?" said the mullah. "Why?" said the mullah, "to think that something with such pretensions is not worth drinking." So he assumed he knew what water was for. And he also assumed that it must be pretentious because it was so beautiful and elegant and so on and so forth. And that's how many times do our human mind think that we understand what something's about, but we have no idea and we judge it anyway. Like these Zen guys, they're just trying to confuse people. It's the opposite. And I've heard people, complain, but they aren't reading actual translations of Zen material. So in a book like these books, we're reading translations from the original by an enlightened translator, and that's absolutely essential, because if you're not enlightened, you can't understand these things. Do you see what I'm saying? So does that answer the question?
Yeah.
All right, so we use everything we can possibly use to, I mean, some teaching masters use service. Some teachers masters use gardening, you know, or they use whatever they think that will work with a given person to get them to stop their mind long enough for them to see that the mind that they've been so preoccupied with, the ego that they're so busy protecting, that they spend your whole life cultivating and, you know, what do you call it when you ornament it and you try and make it look good for other people, and you think it's the most important thing in the world and the whole world revolves around it, and so on and so forth. That you have to be disabused of that notion before you can see what your true self is, which is infinitely more than your tiny little illusory ego. Even life and death on this earth is nothing compared to truth. And so, just for educational purposes, so in these stories, when they talk about circling around in birth and death, or death and birth, what they're talking about is being caught up in that cycle of thinking you were born and thinking you're going to die, because neither one of those is really true. And it's instantly clear when you wake up. When you wake up, you go, oh my God, this is who I am. Or this is what I am. And it changes your life forever. Universally, it changes. And it's been true for as long as we have written records. And in every culture. So there's something deep, there's a deep truth there. And it's right there for us to take, us humans, but so many humans aren't so inclined. So if you're inclined, consider yourself lucky. What do the Sufis say? It's the pearl beyond price. Even that doesn't do it justice. It's the only thing of value on this earth. And the only thing that's durable. But it's not particularly of this earth. Okay, question. Follow up.
Yeah, I have another one.
Good. Thank you for letting me clarify that. Thank you for letting me clarify that. That's really important. People don't know that about Zen koans, what they're for, how they work, how they fit in with the other mystical traditions. So thanks. All right, next question.
The next one is about how they are talking about merging meditation and activities at the same time.
Yes.
So this is on page 54.
All right, what's the question?
So I think I just don't understand what they are talking about, how to merge it. Because when I try to do it on my own, it still feels like doing two things at the same time. So even though I'm now slightly aware that, okay, I am also just being slightly aware, but when I actually get deeply involved in something, I forget.
Yeah, but you're deeply involved in something else, right?
Yeah.
But which part of you is deeply involved? When you're deeply involved, are you thinking about how you look?
No.
Are you thinking about what other people think?
No.
Are you thinking how much money you're going to make or not make?
No.
Are you thinking about what's going to be on TV that night? TV, no. I'm so old. Right, so you're totally focused. There's nothing wrong with that.
But then I lose awareness.
No, you focus your awareness on something else. You haven't lost awareness. Actually, you're not even conscious of yourself. Okay, so the example I always use is the Olympic, those guys who jump off they're skiers or they're snowboarders. And they jump off this thing and then they do like 2 or 3 or 4 loops or 5 loops and then they come down. It's incredible what they do. Now, while they're doing it, when they're in the air doing all the flipping and stuff like that, are they thinking about anything?
No, they just focus on the task at hand.
Right. So are they aware?
I don't.
In a weird way, but not with thought. There's something else. They like turn it all over and they're in the flow. They're in the moment. and they're not using their minds, they're using something else.
Mm-hmm.
By analogy, I'm speaking by analogy, the same thing happens when you're really focused and you're in the flow at work, or if you're painting, or if you're doing something else, right? You could be copy reading, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reading copy. But the point is that you haven't lost your awareness, you just focused it, that's all.
Mm-hmm.
For the rest of the time, you said it yourself, there's a little bit of you that's aware of this. That's all you need as you go through your day, just a little bit of remembrance. Mm-hmm. Remembering God in the back of your mind, remembering truth, remembering your goal, right? Mm-hmm. And then as you go through your activities are informed by that. So let's say you're at work and some pain in the butt guy is back there and he needs help, and he's always mm-hmm. needing help, and it's really annoying or whatever. But see, you've got this little light inside you, this spark, as Meister Eckhart talks about it, of the soul, of the spirit. And that informs you, so you're a little bit kinder to him. Or you remember what Jesus taught, treat the other as yourself. And you do what he needs. Mm-hmm. And you do it with love, even though, and it may not be what he wants, but you do what he needs, and that because of that little spark of awareness, your life is more enlightened. Do you see? Mm-hmm. And that's meditation of a sort. See, this whole meditation thing is to separate. In the beginning, it's just to separate you from your mind. Mm-hmm. And I think you're there. Mm-hmm. So now you can watch your mind, and now you can also keep an eye on your mind with your soul, your spirit, mm-hmm. while you're doing things with your body or with your mind. Mm-hmm. Remember the tonal, heart, mind, body, and soul?
Yeah.
That beautiful, okay. So as you're doing things with your body and with your mind, your soul is still there, and for practical purposes, it's in your heart. Mm-hmm. And so it's with a loving attention or kindness, a loving kindness, you do what's needed by that kid. Mm-hmm. I mean, he may need to have his butt kicked, or he may just need help, or he may just need attention. Or he may need someone to help him with his English, or he may need someone to help him with something else, right? Like, hey, you need to study that on your own, or you need to get off your butt and do some more work at, and read the manual or something. I don't know, but what you do out of love, and you do what's needed. And if you're informed by the spirit, what you do is much more likely to be actually what's needed, as opposed to what he thinks or you think with your mind is needed. Does that make mm-hmm. sense? And that's real intuition. Yeah. Real intuition comes from the soul, from the spirit, from the truth, from the essence, mm-hmm. from God, from reality. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Taoist, it's very revealing to read Meister Eckhart, because he sounds just like a Zen master or just like a Taoist. I mean, literally, he's more Taoist than the Taoists at times. It's pretty amazing. And so that's another, it's just for people that need that, the fact that this is a universal truth across culture and millennia, to me is a strong suggestion that there's probably something there. Mm-hmm. You won't need that later, you probably don't need it now, but some people do. Okay, does that answer that?
Okay. Yeah, that answers it.
Okay.
Cool. I think that's pretty much what I had for today.
Okay, sir. Well, those are some good questions. Thank you for letting me, recommend these beautiful books that are in danger of going out of print and being lost, which is a great tragedy. And some of these translations I imagine they'll be discovered, but probably take another 100, 200 years, 300 years, and who knows? Because they aren't popular because they're difficult, but they're priceless treasures, right? Mm-hmm. For us in English, right? Because they exist in other languages. And hopefully remember in the Cultural Revolution, the Chinese tried to burn everything to the ground. And they're doing the same thing right now with the Tibetan canon, if they could. And so we go through these dark ages, and we're entering one now, it looks like. Who knows how long it'll last. But to preserve some of these literally priceless treasures of learning and of teaching and of art and of poetry and of history and of technology that we're going to need, because the AI is not going to be able to do this stuff. To me, that's a worthwhile endeavor, and so thank you for helping me with that. Okay, sir?
Well, thank you.
Take good care.